We have a special guest today. Robert, would you introduce yourself and give a couple of minutes of your view on the property market?
Robert Ciemniak, brief intro. I'm in New York at the moment, but based in Hong Kong. We specialize in research on China property sector for foreign investors, mix of on-the-ground work on bespoke projects in China. I've seen 100 development projects in the last 6 months. And we also do forecasting for the housing market. So our take on property, we're clearly in the downturn, but we do see actually several signs of pickup. And it's not yet visible in aggregate level, but if you look in depth across 60 to 100 cities, more and more cities are showing sequential pickup in volumes, which is a good leading indicator of where prices would be headed. At this stage, still on lower prices. And in some cities, like tier 2 cities like Hangzhou, Wuhan, Wuxi, that tend to be seen as heavily oversupplied, prices started to stabilize and volumes are actually doing very well. In Q4, we saw a big jump in sales volumes in tier 1 cities, and in tier 2 and tier 3, much less negative. So we've actually, maybe a little contrarian, but we would see that we are headed for a rebound, but not a rebound like in 2012. So this time, more of a less negative gradual pickup. So we might end up the year just low single positive digit in terms of house price growth. We measure the SOFA 100 Cities House Price Index as a benchmark, and we forecast that. In terms of the sort of credits, key other factors, I think people mentioned on the call, the last year's removal of home purchase restrictions, except for tier 1 and Tele. More importantly, though, the mortgage easing end of September, that has the biggest impact, and the rate cuts. From our on-the-ground work, I can tell you, like even in like tier 5 city in Guangdong province, where we went recently, you actually do see a pickup in volumes. So the single most important factor is just mortgage easing and credit easing. That really, really works in a short cycle. The big debt questions that were raised, they remain, but we would doubt that that would play out in the short term. The conditions for the developers, the number we have is actually 80,000 developers in China, of which I think 400 are listed and probably 20 are traded. They've always been having leverage, and it's getting even more and more so. But somehow they are managing to hold on, somehow find another channel, another way. Again, from talking to many fund managers and private equity, we know that the cost of funding for mid-sized local developers has increased. So what I mean is for new construction loans and for new projects. So it used to be maybe 10, 14% last year, but now perhaps 14, 18%. But they're still managing to do that. So for as long as the sales volumes pick up, the engineering of that happens, there may not be such a big trouble. But having said that, even the government's intention seems to be consolidation in the sector. So it wouldn't be surprising if there are some defaults or mergers among the developers, because it's a very heavily fragmented industry by any standards.
What is the potential fallout of a Kaisa default?
So when you look at some benchmark pricing of high-yield bonds, the other ones, you saw that on the first news, it all kind of came down heavily, but like a week later, it all came back, right? So the sense is that it's just a political case, other than obviously exposing that they had much more debt than everybody thought. So at the moment, the market doesn't seem to think this is a big issue. But you always have this risk in terms of which one is next. But that's less of the credit risk; that's more of a political risk.
I listened with great interest, and I'm actually happy to hear this comment on the upticks that are visible in some parts of the property markets. That was the comment I was making at our last forum a few months ago, and I didn't see confirmation of that in the turnover or price numbers I saw for January and February. But your contact in Hong Kong, I think, reassures me that things are still perhaps pointing in the right direction then.
Yeah, that's kind of in line with what we heard on the ground too. People who are selling homes, the brokers, commented on pickup in a volume in March. We think that we probably should wait out a little bit because we wanted to have the seasonality smooth out a little bit. So perhaps look at a Q1 in aggregate and do a year-over-year comparison.